Welcome to the show. Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Dion DiMucci has another album out. It is incredible. I love the blues genre. It's called Blues and Friends. We're going to talk about it with the Wanderer himself right here on the Patrick Coffin Show. This episode brought to you by Coffin Nation. Check out CoffinNation.com. We have members in over 25 countries. We are restoring the DNA damage done to the culture through the gospel without compromise, through understanding where we came from so we can understand where the heck we're going and how did we get in this handbasket. CoffinNation.com. Check out the things that are enjoyed by folks around the world. We finish each other's sentences. We have lots of raucous, faith-filled, hilarious conversations, and love to have you join us. CoffinNation.com. Coming up next, Dion. Dion DiMucci has been a professional musician and just cranking out album after album almost every year since the late 50s. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1989. His new album, Blues and Friends, hit, I think, number 5 in all categories in Billboard, number 1 in the blues album category, number 1 in iTunes. Dion, it's a great honor to talk to you, sir.
Joy to be with you, Patrick. Joy to be here.
When people say, well, Dion was a sort of a teen idol, and then he reinvented himself in the 60s, and then he reinvented himself in the 70s, and now he's doing this kind of return to the blues genre. But when I listen to the underlying meaning of your songs and the quality of your voice, let me start with this. At 81, I'm not blowing smoke. You sound half your age. Your voice is still so supple. It sounds like you can lit into all of your original songs in the same key. Is that right?
True. Hey, it's number 1 on Amazon.
Number 1 on Amazon. Okay,
it's
fantastic.
Number 1 in Billboard for the last 4 weeks. Hey,
okay.
I must say, you use this term, reinvent yourself, and I have to say I never invented myself in the first place, so I'm not going to try and reinvent myself. Yeah. I just look at it like I'm a child of God. And I am developing, I'm evolving, like an acorn in an oak tree. And as far as vocally, I was talking to Paul Simon the other day because he still has this sweet, innocent, beautiful sound to his voice that, and he's 76, 77. And at my age, I sing better than ever. I feel better than ever. But I don't sound like I did when I was 17. I kind of lost that innocent sound.
Yeah.
But I enjoy singing more than ever, And I'm not limited. I think it's because I live a clean life. I've been married 57 years, clean
Fantastic.
And sober 52 years. I'm a grateful guy. So, life is good.
Yeah, I brought that up to have it either you or I was going to knock it down. You didn't reinvent yourself. When I hear your early stuff, there's a kind of a fusion between what we now call rock and roll and blues. You've never really strayed from that as the kind of your the well of your creativity.
Yeah, a lot of people think I changed. They go, "Oh, you changed." Nah, The Wanderer was a blues song. Ruby Baby, Drip Drop. I think even Run Around Sue was a cleverly disguised blues song. It was always the foundation of my whole trip because when I was a kid, I really got thrown on the road when I heard Hank Williams sing Honky Tonk Blues. I had a little transistor radio and I caught this Don Larkin show in Jersey. And then I started tuning in some Wheeling, West Virginia stations and I heard Jimmy Reed and I wanted to groove like Jimmy Reed. I wanted to communicate like Hank Williams. So, and I'm still like that. That happened when I was 10, 11 years old. It just changed my life, Patrick.
Growing up in the Bronx, did someone put a guitar in your hand? Did you want to be a guitar player, or was the vocals always the kind of the lead, the train of the whole thing, the engine?
It was this. Yeah, it was. Somebody put a guitar. My uncle bought me a guitar, like $8 guitar from a pawn shop, and I learned a few chords and I heard Hank Williams and I started to just, you know, I don't know. I wanted to sound like him because vocally, to me as a kid, he sounded so confident. He chewed the words off. He ripped the end of the words. He was so committed spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally. He was just all in, you know, and ripped those words. And it just sounded so passionate to me. I've never been the same since I heard him, you know, and that's why I'm here.
Right.
It's great.
You listen to someone like Hank Williams, and we mean senior folks, not Hank Williams Jr.
Yeah, right.
There's a kind of a plaintive, direct, unvarnished quality to it. It grabs you by the lapels. And I think of people like Edith Piaf, people who in their own lives have suffered terribly. It kind of comes out. You were introduced to heroin at a young age, and tell me if I'm overplaying the card here, but your initial skyrocket to success was matched by increasing drug use at the same time. Is that true?
Yeah, you know, that's where I got. Yes, I got introduced to, you know, drugs when I was a kid, and for some reason I never had to second guess myself when I was high. I thought you're supposed to be born knowing everything. I took one of these drugs. I thought like, yo, the kid is here. What do you want to know? I thought I knew everything. So, you know, I had this attitude. It was like, give me some of that and I'll do whatever I want to do. But, you know, here's the way it is. The first stage of using heroin or drinking or whatever that, you know, first stage is fun. The second stage is fun and some problems. And then it's nothing but problems. And in 1968, I used to run with, a lot of your listeners probably wouldn't remember Frankie Lyman.
I remember
But I
Frankie
ran with
Lyman.
Frankie Lyman. And we used to take drugs together and party together. And he died in 1968, February. And it really jarred me to my senses. And I got on my knees one night and I said, God, if you're real, you have to help me because I don't. And I had 12 gold records on the wall. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had money in the bank. And I cried out. I said, you know, I need to be close to you if you're real. I didn't know God from a hole in the wall. But Patrick, when I got up, I was changed. I haven't had a drug or a drink since. That was April 1st, 1968.
Still real vivid in your mind. I can tell by the way you tell the story.
Oh, yeah. It turned me around. It was a defining moment in my life.
You mentioned February. Of course, I'm thinking February 3rd, 1959. And you said something interesting in another interview, or it might have been a talk you gave, that when people think of that day, early that morning, when you did not get on the plane and the Big Bopper and Ritchie Valens and Buddy Holly did, that was the day the music died. It's enshrined in American Pie, and there's movies made about it and so on, books written. But you think that's been misinterpreted, that in a way is the day the music blew up in a good way.
Well, you know, Don McLean wrote a song. In fact, I think that song is very Catholic. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's just about Buddy Holly and J.P. Richardson and Ritchie Valens. Mm-hmm. That song is talking about America changing. And he was wondering what to hold on to. You know, he talks about the Trinity in it and all. But I never looked at it like the day the music died. I looked at it like the day the music was born. And it's almost like the parable that Jesus said, unless a seed falls to the ground and dies, it doesn't bear fruit. And I felt like after we lost these three great writers, three great men, friends, beautiful people, that bands just started, you know, because they were the original. Buddy Holly was like two guitars, bass, and drums, and he wrote his own songs. And then it seemed like after that, just bands just grew from everywhere in the world, you know, whether it was from, you know, Asia to you know, Britain to across, Australia. There was bands popping up all over. So I felt like it was the beginning.
Could you say that Buddy Holly's sort of a proto Beatle, a proto Rolling Stone?
Oh yeah, and I think they would. I think they would say that. I never looked at it like the British invasion. I looked at it like the British infusion, because they picked up on all the good music we had here, the blues, early rock and rollers, first generation rock and rollers, Buddy Holly, Lloyd Price, Little Richard.
You knew Little Richard pretty well.
Yeah, he was an interesting guy. I think his image, people thought he was like crazy kind of guy, self-centered, kind of like outrageous. But he was a very, very warm-hearted, generous, considerate guy. He when you were with him, he was present. He was a good guy.
Would you take the train to Harlem from Brooklyn to go the clubs there, the Apollo?
Well,
because there's a kind of a undercurrent of black influence in the blues. Sam Cooke, you mentioned Jimmy Reed, Frankie Lyman. It's present there.
Well, I lived in the Bronx,
yeah, not
Brooklyn. But
excuse me, I meant to say Brooklyn. I went to say the Bronx. Yeah,
yeah. Brooklyn doesn't have an X.
Gotcha. The X is silent in Brooklyn.
But it's the same thing, But, in a way, just think about it, Patrick. I just read this book by Malcolm Gladwell, and I think it was called Outliers, and he talks about
good book.
But then you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
A gymnast has to grow up 5 miles from a gym with a great coach. If you don't, you're not going to get taught. I was so close to Manhattan. Yes, I jumped on the train, went downtown. I could go to the Apollo Theater. I could go to Manhattan, a few stops, and there I was at a record company. So I was blessed with this, maybe the location I was born in, here in America, a certain time and place. He made me, Malcolm made me started thinking about this stuff. That, yeah, I was in the right place at the right time. And plus, I really feel that God gives us all gifts, but, gave me a chance to hone my gift and make me flourish,
Another fascinating element to that, since you're talking about outliers, is the 10,000 hour rule. People always say, people like you or people like the Beatles, they remember the splash that the Beatles made on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1964. But they'd already been doing it for 10,000 hours in Hamburg, Germany. They had this tight-knit playing over and over and over again. That's part of the secret sauce for you, isn't it? Just repetition and practice and performing and writing.
A funny story that I lived on 57th in Manhattan when I got married to Susan. We've been married 57 years now.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah, she's a great girl. I met John Lennon and Ringo in a clothing store on Fifth Avenue and 57th Street. And I think it was February of '64. They came in from Great Britain to play Carnegie Hall. Sid Bernstein had brought them in to do their first concert. And I was talking to John, and he knew who I was because I had some hit records. I had Run Around Sue, The Wanderer, and Ruby Baby. And he told me when I met him that they sang, the Beatles sang, he loved singing Ruby Baby in Hamburg, Germany, And so I always thought when they put out Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, and they have Bob Dylan and myself, our faces are on the cover in that collage.
Yeah.
That I always thought he cut my head out from the Ruby Baby album cover, So I'd like to think so.
You and Bob Dylan are the only contemporaries on that album. I think everyone else is kind of a historical figure, right? They're all
back then when they released it, yeah. Now we're relics. I'm only kidding.
Holy relics, Dion. Come on. Glass half full. Glass half full. How did you get connected with Bob Dylan to have him write the liner notes for Blues and Friends? It's beautifully written.
You know, Patrick, this album, I'm telling you, to be 81, have a #1 blues album in Billboard for like 8 weeks now, and on Amazon and on the blues charts, crazy. I couldn't plan it if I tried. I was in the middle of putting this play together with Charles Messina, who wrote a great story, trying to get to Broadway. The play is unbelievable.
This is The Wanderer, right?
Yeah, it's called The Wanderer.
Been in the works for years, getting this thing shaped together.
Yeah, and it's going to open next year. They had to reschedule it.
Yeah,
but it's wonderful to be in a rehearsal hall with 50 talented kids and doing this. And I was involved in working on the show, and it's Charles Messina writes with such substance. You could entertain me all day long if you give me something of substance, and he did. It's all about it's rock and roll, street history, it's action, romance, betrayal, overcoming betrayal, has a lot of laughs, has great music that we've made over the years. So it was a lot of fun working on it. I had 2 months off, and I had these 14 songs that I had written while we were rehearsing, just in the apartment. I just put them together, and I had 14 of the best songs I ever wrote. I felt, I said, man, this is a group of songs. I'm getting better as a writer. So I went into a little studio, knocked them out in 3 days. Joe Bonamassa came over to visit me, heard blues coming on, said, I want to play on that. I said, be my guest. He plays on it. Blows my mind because, Patrick, I kid you not, I know how to sing a song, communicate, make a record. I know how to do that. But he showed me how limited I am in my concept of, he just took me to another place. And I thought, I think it's fair to say that he ignited the vision for the album, because once he did that, I thought, man, I'm gonna send this ballad to Jeff Beck. When he plays guitar, he can make me cry. He belongs on this. And Jeff said yes. And I thought, wow, I'm into something here. When he played on Can't Get Started Again, I thought, man, this is a great idea. I'm gonna farm these songs, because these great artists, these masterful, monster, distinctive, mesmerizing artists that I picked, that when they infuse what they're hearing onto my song, I thought, wow, it was so thrilling and exciting for me to listen to this stuff. And I just kept going. It was like riding a wave. And it was like I had these songs, and I was like casting these great artists, these great, most of them are guitar players, great guitar players. And they just made it something sublime. I kept going. It was like riding a wave.
Then Brian Seltzer, that kind of typifies that sound. He's the man. He's the icon for that style of guitar playing.
Yeah, Stray Cats.
Yeah.
I had this song called Uptown Number 7. It was like a gospel, spiritual, like rockabilly thing. I thought, blues thing, of course. But he said yes, and nobody plays like Brian Setzer. It's so much fun playing with a guy like that. It's just this album was the most fun I ever had. So the question was, how to get Bob Dylan? The thing is, I finished the album. All 14 songs. I have somebody wonderful, really that I highly respect on each song. And I thought, I should get somebody to write something about what I'm doing here. Now, we know that Bob Dylan is, the greatest songwriter in the 20th century and beyond, and won a Nobel Prize. and he knows how to put words to paper. And I thought, I'll let him hear it. So I sent the album to Bob, and I said, if you want to write something about it, but see, people don't know that Bob Dylan, I don't think a lot of people know that he's a great blues singer. Mm-hmm. He really is steeped in blues tradition, I believe. And so I sent it to him, and he wrote something. When he writes something, you get somebody like that to write something, you always find out something that you didn't know. The guy's brilliant. Mm-hmm. In his writing, he always kind of shows you something you didn't know. He said there's a built-in law in the blues, and he wished more people would follow it, because you don't have to destroy yourself to sing it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this is another Catholic theme. It's like the natural moral law. You got guardrails. Don't smash down the guardrails, because then it's just a mess. You need that kind of focus.
Everybody has the blues. I mean, yeah. John Paul II was, lived in Poland under the Nazis and communism. And I mean, he had the blues. Come on.
It's funny, we call depression the blues. The genre of music and the state of sadness are kind of like kissing cousins.
Well, B.B. King said it feels so good to sing about something so bad.
Well, isn't that another crossover with the country music genre? This kind of making sense of suffering idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, the blues is such a simple form of music, a God-given form of music. It's like the naked cry of the human heart, longing to be in union with God, but we have a way to express it. Our joys, our dreams, our hopes, our frustration, our fears. If you didn't have the form, you'd wind in and just explode, but it gives you a chance to get out and have a chance to really grab onto salvation,
There's a paradox there, it seems to me. I've thought about this in terms of musicians, songwriters, and also movie writers. There's it's almost a cliche to say that heathens make the best Christian music and movies. By that I mean Christopher West came up with a phrase. I'm kind of jealous. I didn't think it up. It's Christopher's phrase, twisted mystic. A twisted mystic is someone they're not necessarily a churchgoer, but through their own trials, their own sufferings, they kind of, in their own reaching out for meaning and truth and God, there's a kind of brilliance that can happen when all that darkness, all that sadness gets transmuted through music. Is this making any sense?
Man, that's a beautiful way to say it. I never heard it said like that. I'm going to go back and listen to this and write it down. Okay. because it's so true. I mean, look at Bruce Springsteen. Before he ever thought about it, he wrote a song called Everybody's Got a Hungry Heart. I mean, Bob Dylan, before he ever really came in or, became conscious, he's writing Blowing in the Wind, The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. I mean, or like a Rolling Stone, if that, there's so many songs. Billy Joel's "I Love You Just the Way You Are." I mean, the people that you wouldn't find in church, not necessarily identify with like him, like a conscious contact with a personal relationship with God. Yeah, they would say, I don't know, but. Like all through Paul Simon's writings, all three. I was talking to him the other day. I said, "Do you know that Saint Cecilia?" He put out an album called Saint Cecilia. Yeah. I said, "She's a saint of music." He went, "Oh, I didn't know that. I just like the name."
Yeah, yeah, and talk about the blues. She was beheaded for her troubles.
There you go. But you're right. When I was a kid at 16. I wrote a song called Born to Cry, and it says, I know that someday soon the master will call, and when he does, I won't cry at all. Until it happens, friends, I'll sail with the tide, but I know I was born to cry. But, I'm talking about the master calling. I didn't know God from a hole in the wall,
Yeah, but there it is. You were a twisted mystic.
I love it. But it shows you how God is close and loves us all, and uh, you know, it's he knows our hearts. He's present, and he's you know, he's either everything or he's nothing, man. He's
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah. He's not reading a magazine servant. He's the suffering servant, right? And
Yes.
sometimes people, I'm sure you've heard of Oscar Wilde. In fact, I think Oscar Wilde is also on the Sgt. Pepper's album cover. He, after he went to prison, he wrote this line that is just so beautiful. He says, I think it's in his poem "Ode from Reading Jail," something Ballad of Reading Jail, where he was imprisoned. How else but through a broken heart can the Lord Christ enter in? Which
You
is
know,
kind of the opposite of music, isn't it? Because music is that all that coming out.
yeah, when you know when your heart's broken and you're in that place, you do cry out into something, you know, mystical, you know, spiritual, which
Mm-hmm.
means not physical, you
Yeah.
know, transcendent,
Yep.
and you're open.
Mm-hmm.
Very important to be open. Very
Mm-hmm.
important.
And
Uh,
why are angels called a choir, right?
Quiet. Yes.
There's a Japanese film director. He's kind of the top guy in Japanese film history. His name's Akira Kurosawa. He did a hit that was popular about 30 years ago called Ran, which is a reinterpretation of King Lear. And he said, again, this guy's a Shinto. He's not a Christian. Man comes into the world crying, and when he's cried enough, he dies. That's the blues.
Well, and well, there's a lot of, you know, I don't know.
That's kind of the cross without without resurrection, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I'm filled with too much joy with the grandkids and my kids, and I've been
Yeah.
I'm a grateful guy. You know, uh, being we're on this track, I wanted to tell you I
Mhm.
had this song called "Hymn to Him,"
Yeah, that was my next question.
and
Yes.
it was kind of like, well, it's a gospel song, and it's reaching out to people suffering or people, you know, hurting and looking for the handle, looking for the
Hmm.
door, you know. Uh, and I sent it to Patty Scalfa because I thought Patty is she's like the soul girl from Jersey,
Hmm.
you know, and she has this very soulful voice, and I thought she's going to sound great on this. We would do some harmony lines, and she could echo some words that I said, you know, this whole I had in my head, you know, in my limited thinking. So I sent
Hmm.
it to Patty. She loved the song, and so did Bruce. You know, Springsteen
Hmm.
loved the song, and she went in and did something like I never told people. I never gave them directions. They're just great artists who hear things. She stacked vocals on this song,
Hmm.
and she captured the wind of the Holy Spirit. And Bruce comes in with his gravitas guitar
Hmm.
and lays down a guitar solo that captures, you know, the universe and beyond, and the bigness of the song in a very, uh, very direct kind of intimate. What? Because the song is intimate,
Hmm.
but behind it, she captured this sound I never heard before, and so it was like a gift to me. These are the surprises
Hmm.
that came about doing an album like this, and I guess I was loose enough to not feel that much, you know, that I had to control everything,
Yeah.
and it was a gift to me. You know, I just feel like it was a gift from God, the whole album. I wasn't stressed. I felt like I was just in the pocket. You know,
Hmm.
I caught
Hmm.
the wave and I just rode it in, you know?
You put your sail up,
Yeah.
and the answer came blowing in the wind. That was the first song I heard on the album, the Hymn to Him, and it made me think: is this the kind of song that kind of just kind of pops out, kind of ripe and fresh, or was it more nose to grindstone, hard work to get it to the finish line?
You know, a lot of these songs came about. I, I felt like I was under the spout where the glory comes out. I was under the wellspring of creativity. They just kind of write them, you just open and you kind of, that's the gift. You just kind of write them. They come to you, I had the idea, and it just, a lot of this album came, just kind of flowed. I'll tell you a great story about one of the songs, because I'm just so happy about it. My wife, Susan, loves Van Morrison. Okay. That's her favorite singer in the whole world. So you get in her car, she has like 8 or 12 Van Morrison albums. And I always told her, Susan, we're soul brothers. Van and I, man, we're soul, because we've sang together. He's called me up on stage before, and I him. So, I had this song, I Got Nothing. And I said to her, nothing's enough. Nothing's is more than enough when you get Van Morrison to sing with you. So I asked him to sing with me. We went into the studio. We did this song. I did a song with Van Morrison. Okay. Now,
so your stock went up with your wife instantly.
Totally. I got the CD, threw it in the car. I said, check it out, and I'm in. I'm in, like, the next 30 years, I'm in.
Well, he brings all that soul and blues sound too. First, when I was listening to him sing, it brought back Have I Told You Lately That I Love You? This kind of unvarnished, almost a country song. It's hard to...
Yeah, he's a seeker too, and he's close. He's, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I said, I'm not getting better. I'm getting closer.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to steal that.
He must increase. I must decrease.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I see a lot of this kind of longing, when you mention Hungry Heart, a lot of Bruce Springsteen's stuff and collaboration with Patty. There's a kind of this built-in reaching out for something solid, something forever, something firm and reliable.
Yeah, I think we all are, sure. And the only thing is, the problem, if there's a problem, that's why I say open. To be open is very, very, very important. Because I told a friend of mine once, I said, if you love somebody unconditionally, love will, it'll come back to you. And he went, oh, no. He said, no, that's not the way it works. He says, some people push back. They can't take it. They'll push back. They don't want, they can't receive it.
Yeah.
And when there was a line I read in Ralph Martin's book. He wrote a book called The Fulfillment of All Desire.
I've been I love that book. I love Ralph Martin.
If you understand the title, you don't have to read the book. But there's a line in it that, or it could be in his The Crisis of Truth, I think, that he wrote. And one of the books, he said, I was in search. I loved being in the search for truth. Underline search. I love the search for truth. I look sensitive. I was in love with the search for truth. But when I came to it, I didn't want to embrace it. Then that means you got to change. That means you're home. That's a whole other deal. See, he said, I was in love with the search for truth. That was it, and he stayed outside of it.
All about the journey.
Yeah, and I thought that was brilliant, because you don't want to stay in love with the search, because when you find it, it's good to pull the trigger and make the decision.
Yeah, Ralph's rewriting that book, by the way, The Crisis of Truth. He's I've been kind of knocking on his door for a couple of years. That book was huge in my return to the church, Crisis of Truth, 1981, I think.
Yeah, I'll tell you another story. When I met Ralph, I had my copy of Crises of Truth, and I showed it to him, and it was all marked up, and I had yellow, and I was like, underline this and underline every page, and he went, wow. He said, you're a bright guy. I said, why? Because I underlined your book. Because I marked up your book. I love Ralph. I love Ralph.
He's a natural born teacher. Yeah.
Yeah.
So your copy was properly mutilated. That's a great compliment to an author.
I like that.
The Joe Bonamassa, is this new album under his? I've been reading about the Keeping the Blues Alive Foundation.
You know, I'm telling you, Patrick, this whole thing, this trip that I'm on, is crazy, just wonderful. Mm-hmm. I finished the album, and I'm thinking, gee, do I call my friend Rob Santos over at Sony? Do I call, people at Warner? I'm thinking, where am I going to place it? And I thought, you know what? Let me call Roy Weissman. He lives 5 houses from me, right down the street here. That's why Joe comes over once in a while. Mm-hmm. So who he manages, Joe Bonamassa. They're in partnership together. Mm-hmm. So I called Roy and I said, Roy, I said, I got an album here. Joe played on one of the tracks. He said, he did? He said, send it over. I said, I'm just wondering, I need some direction with it. You know about the blues. He said, I am the blues. So I send him the album. He calls me back that night. He says, Dion, I decided to open up a new blues label. Would you like to be the first album on it? And I love Roy. He's a marketing genius. I said, I'm in. And it was like seamless. So off we went, it was just great relationship, having a great time with them, Rachel Iverson over at the Keeping the Blues Alive. They're just rocking it.
I watched an interview with Joe who said that he finds it hard to just sit at home and play. He likes the give and take of the audience. With this, you and I are talking right now with this, I call it the CCP virus lockdown. You miss being on the road? You miss performing? Or are you kind of guy that grabs the axe and just sings because?
No, I love the people. I love to, to take people on a trip. I've been that way ever since I sang at the high school dance. Mm-hmm. I just enjoyed it so much. So I'm like Joe in that respect. But he is, on the other hand, is a true ensemble player. He just needs great musicians around him, because I noticed when I went in and sang Blues Coming On with him, if you listen to that record, you want to hear a masterful guitar player, this guy is epic. If you just, you just pronounce something, or you emphasize a word, or you moan, or you shout outs, whatever you do, he's either before it, after it, on it. He like enhances everything you're doing. He plays about 7 solos on that song. Mm-hmm. He at times he reminds me of John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Thelonious Monk. He truly is I don't know what goes on in his head, but he hears the arrangement coming at him. If I'm singing, he could hear what I'm about to do, or he knows. I don't know how he does it, but he enhances every word, every like syllable.
Will this become a tour, God willing, when the lockdown starts to open up?
Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top keeps, he's on me with that. Let's do it. Let's do Vegas. Let's do Europe. I love Billy, man. He's like something else. He says, just look out, just watch out. He says, I'll send you up a smoke signal.
That's a pretext, people. Look up smoke signal. The timing of the album, especially, maybe I'm saying this because the Hymn to Him song was the first one that I heard. It just seems providentially tailor-made to these times where people feel panicky, they feel stressed, they feel abandoned, alone. We've never gone through something like this. I mean, we've had this pandemic and that. We've had the Y2K thing. We've had one crisis after another. One decade, it's we're going to have a coming ice age. The next decade, it's global warming. And there's a kind of light in the darkness feel to just even to the timing of that song and this album. You can't rehearse that kind of thing, can you? You can't plan it, I mean.
No, I was talking to a friend of mine. He said, this album reminds me of like Solid America. It's like the story of us. It's an American album. They're like American songs. Mm-hmm. A time, which people are trying to dismantle in some crazy way.
Yep.
There's a song on it called "Song for Sam Cooke." Now, mm-hmm. Sam Cooke was, black. I'm talking about a guy that I traveled with in 1964 for weeks on end. The song is about brotherhood. It's about understanding, friendship. It's about his love for me and him teaching me while we were traveling through the South, and it wasn't fun. Mm-hmm. I mean, the way he got treated sometimes off stage, Sam Cooke was a very refined guy. He was a very intelligent guy, a preacher's kid. And, and I saw him in many different situations and some very ugly, like people calling him names. And I'd walk up to him, I'd say, Sam, why don't you punch that guy's lights? I'd just give him a right hook, whack, just hit. And he said, Dion, that, and he taught me about racism. He says, if race matters to you, you're a racist. He said, it doesn't matter to us. It's like eye color or shoe color. He said, it's a peculiar way to become a man, just to think, you got some supremacy, over, just because of the color of your skin. And, he was a good guy, and I watched him up close for weeks on end in crazy situations. We went to see James Brown when nobody knew who James Brown was, mm-hmm. and he protected me because people were on my case. It was kind of reverse racism. It went both ways, mm-hmm. and I watched him in all these situations, and he never got ruffled, he never got ugly. He never got stressed. And I just watched him and I said, why is he like that? Because I was getting pissed off. I was getting like, peeved. And, I was like rough around the edges. I was like, Sam. And then it dawned on me why he was like the way he was. He was the brightest guy in the room. And he taught me to reach for higher ground, higher pitch, a higher reality. And, I haven't been the same. So I miss that guy. He taught me a lot. I loved him. And I still do after like 60 years. It's crazy.
Another died too young star.
Yeah.
Do you think he, in some ways, invented the soul genre? I mean, blues predates him, but you think Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder, Billy Preston, he was the giant on there. They were sitting on his shoulders in some way.
Oh, Sam Cooke was magnificent. He sang with the Soul Stirrers for a while. He mm-hmm. was in the gospel group for a long time and just had a beautiful way. He put a note out there and just draw it back, and it just was like cascading water. He wanted to change the world. He did it through his writing, through his singing, through his art, but most of all, traveling with him, I saw the way he did most of it through friendship and through living the gospel. That's what I see now that I look back on it. Love your brother as yourself, and just laying your life down and just, turning the other cheek and showing people how absurd they are in a beautiful way, how he did it. Mm-hmm. He would like mirror back to them how dumb they were without getting angry. I thought this guy's, so he really changed my life, for the better.
You've just met, collaborated with, influenced, started so many trends. I don't know of any trend you followed. You seem to start them from late 50s to multi-genre. You ever look and just the brevity of life and how fast, here we are talking, it's 2020, boom. People live like they're owed tomorrow. That's a dumb way to live too, isn't it?
Yeah, Patrick, I thought getting old would take longer.
Right.
I just looked around and all of a sudden I'm like, what? I need a bigger cake. I can't fit the candles on it.
You're bringing me back. One of my first television memories as a kid and growing up in Canada was watching you on the Smothers Brothers, and you sang Abraham, Martin, and John. And I couldn't explain to my parents why I was tearing up. I just remember those melancholy chords and the way you phrased it. Just beautiful. Just it was the song for that generation in that moment.
That was crazy, that show, because all the musicians were on strike. So I was on the show with George Harrison, Donovan, and myself, but we were all guitar players. So we got with these singers and we did everything vocally and just with the guitar. Mm-hmm. So it was quite, it was a different show. That was a trip in itself.
It was you were up in almost a cage, like a skybox. I remember.
They put me up on, I don't know what they did. Put me up on a ladder. I said, "How am I going to play up here?" I was like frightened to death. I don't like heights, so I wasn't at my best singing up there. Put me on a little platform, like 60 feet in the air. I don't know what I was doing.
Now that song came out in '68. Was that around the time, I'm just thinking, gonna get the timeline straight. Was that when you cried out to God in that life-changing prayer? Yeah. Was that about the same chapter in your life?
You want to know? This is crazy. I got on my knees. I said a prayer, got up. I was changed. I thought, wow, I really became aware of God's power before I became aware of his reality. Mm-hmm. But he took away the obsession to drink and drug. And 3 months after that, this song, Abraham, Martin, and John, comes to me. Mm-hmm. And I record it, and it becomes like an anthem across the land. It's like number one. I was rival with Hit the Road Jack, by Ray Charles. And and it was a song about love, just that there is a state of love that does exist, but we have to work at it to make it real, and love takes a lot of courage and work. You have to listen to people and give them attention. Mm-hmm. I don't know what all this yelling and all this craziness in the streets, what that's going to do, what that's going to change. I have no idea what that's about. Anybody, I watch all that stuff. I think anybody who's preaching or telling in any way, telling people that they have to be dependent on, that somebody owes them something. Yeah. They're off the track. My mother would have never brought me up that way. She would have are you kidding? Get a job. I'll give you a shot and
produce something, achieve something. Yeah.
Yeah. She would have said, start here. This is where it's at. Don't try to, because if there's somebody out there telling you don't listen. They're making you dependent. They're giving you they're trying to make you dependent on something instead of preaching excellence. And it's more fun to be free. We have, you could live in a society, I guess, where you level out the income. Everybody has the same income, but you take away liberty. You have no artistic freedom, nothing. You're dead.
Yeah, and they also the oligarchs, as I call them, incentivize this notion of resentment. They just want to stoke those fires of resentment. My being unhappy and unsuccessful is the man's fault or his fault, or it's some systemic problem.
Well, see, I know because I was like that. I was like that when I used drugs. I would, you get to a point where you blame everybody. This is the way you live when you take drugs.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you? You know what you should do? You never, you always, you. No, that's not the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
When I stop the blame game, I have a wife who drives me sane.
Nice. Yeah, my parents were married 58 years. And nowadays it's a wonder to behold. I heard someone describe marriage somewhat like sobriety. It's worked so far. I think I'll try it again tomorrow.
I don't know.
So Abraham Martin and John, and I'll put it this way, this anthemic summing up of the 60s and the sense of lostness and fear that was in the air. You had so many killings, JFK, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King Jr., the French government was almost toppled in 1968. You had the Tet Offensive. The campuses were burning down with protests. Do you feel like this era, Dion, is kind of, it's not maybe repeating, but it's rhyming? There's a kind of a weird retro return to that chaotic spirit of the 60s. Does that make sense?
I don't know. I get the feeling like that, there's a group out there trying to dismantle America, which, the founding fathers invented liberty. Yeah, and I've done some traveling. So these are kids running around the streets yelling and stuff. They don't really, I don't think they really understand. They haven't been around, but this is the greatest country in the world. I mean, it's the most loving and caring. And, it's not free of problems and not that we can't make it better. We could always do that, but it's the greatest country in the world. And, I just, it gives you such, it's just beautiful to live here. And I think somebody's selling these kids a bill of goods that the Constitution, and now they're after churches because the founding fathers were religious, but, or had they were scripturally based, which is love. Excuse me. God is love. Period.
Yeah.
And they invented liberty and this love that that really drives us all here,
I've been talking a lot about the fatherlessness and either absent or abusive fathers that are behind so many headlines. You look at the radicals that found these groups, they're into Karl Marx, who also hated his father. Think of the word patriarchy, right? Patris in Latin, patria, the father. It's a hatred, a rage against the father, which is in a way an echo of the devil's hatred of his father. The devil has a father wound.
Well, I'm from New York, so I grew up cynical, critical, argumentative. I was defiant. And then one day when you get a little older, you open up and you're around people you really respect and you start being open, you start realizing that God loved us so much that he gave us a path, a way to really bring joy to our lives and make us fully alive. He's not in competition with us. He's not looking to crimp our stock. He's looking to make to enhance our lives so we're fully alive. And that takes some discipline and formality and he gave us, God forbid you should say, rules in New York, that you have to, but he loved us so much. He said, hey, don't play in traffic, come on, you're going to, so I just look at it like I love the church. It took me a while to open up and realize, to understand what it was, and it's beautiful to me. I came in through the door of beauty. I just love it. There's brilliance there. There's wisdom. There's a calm spirit. There's strength. There's power. There's courage. Tolerance, there's honesty, the patience, all the stuff that that serenity, the peace, the forgiveness, all the good stuff that you're really searching for. That's right. That's where I found it.
It sounds like your parents laid that foundation with baptism and confirmation, even though you might not have been practicing your faith on a daily basis. Do you think that foundation led to your return all the way back home to the Catholic Church after you had many years in other Christian circles?
Well, when I was a kid, there was a little cathedral in the center of Little Italy in the Bronx, and I used to pass Mount Carmel Catholic Church, where I was baptized and confirmed as a kid. And Monsignor Peternacone used to be out on the street, and he used to like engage the kids. They would all run, but I'd go over to him. He'd say, "Dion, what's this movie Rebel Without a Cause?" I say, "Hey, Monsignor, yo, that's a James Dean movie. Monsignor, that's a cool movie." Say, "Dion, why rebel without a cause? Rebel for the truth, Dion." Let me ask you something, Dion. What makes a man happy? I say, "Monsignor, if I could get a J200 guitar and a Thunderbird with black leather bucket seats and wire chrome wheels, and I get a hit record, and I get a date with Susan. She moved down from Vermont. Monsignor, and she's a righteous fox. And if I get a date with her, I'd be a happy man, Monsignor." He go, "No, Dion. The virtuous man is a happy man." And I go, "Oh, thanks for reminding me. I'll see you later." And I walk away. I go, "What's he talking about?" I didn't know what he was talking about. And then I turn around and say, what's virtue? And then I found out it's a habitual and firm disposition to do the good. I was up to no good. I was like, but somewhere in my life, when it gets chaotic and you're looking for the handle and you feel lost, Monsignor Peternacone rings true in my head. And these are the things that reel me back, because I really never had formation. I really never went for religious instructions. It was just, it kind of permeated the church, the church bells and Easter and my aunts and uncles. My parents weren't religious at all. So, but it kind of just the atmosphere of the church permeated the neighborhood.
In some sense, it took. I mean, here you are, how many years later, repeating what he said to you that day. That was probably your guardian angel giving you some help there, making it stick.
Yeah, you get with your aunts and uncles, and they take you to like a late mass on Christmas, and you see the candles and the choirs singing and the lights and the bells and the whistles and everything is harmony. Everybody's singing together. Come on, it just, it's heaven. Mm-hmm. It's a bit of heaven.
Well, I could go for at least 14 more hours, Dion. It's an honor to talk with you. I've learned a lot today. I love your stories. I know you've got an anecdote factory. Maybe we'll catch up one time down the road. I'd love to see you on the road if you ever get to the West Coast, God willing. So thanks for your time. Thanks for your work. Thanks for being such a humble national treasure.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for the time. God bless you. Stay safe. Stay strong.
Thank you. The album's called Blues and Friends. This is the Patrick Coffin Show. Be a saint. What else is there?
Hey, this is Patrick Coffin. If you like what you see and hear and you want to see and hear more, consider joining Coffin Nation as a full member. Just click right here and find out more about what that means. Nipsey, my fedora. That's Coffin Nation, the world's largest online community of culture builders. Click right here. See you on the inside.